The winds of change swept across Earth, and yet no one had prepared for what was about to come. In the deep, silent vacuum of space, Lord Tyvarn's fleet, an unrelenting juggernaut of warships, hung just beyond Earth's orbit. To the untrained eye, the Drakkar Empire might have looked like a distant, abstract threat, something Earth's leaders could ignore or delay. But they were wrong, dead wrong. The Drakkar were no mere conquerors, they were destroyers. Their warships were massive, capable of incinerating entire cities with nothing more than a whisper of energy. And at the heart of this unstoppable force was Tyrann himself, a tyrant who had wiped out entire species across the galaxy with cold efficiency. The once proud cultures of the galaxy were now ashes under his iron rule. And Earth was nothing more than an uncharted dot on the galactic map, until now. Back on Earth, news spread of the Drakkar's approach, and with it came a wave of panic. The United Earth Council, an alliance of Earth's largest military and political factions, convened in a hurried emergency session. But the leaders sat in stunned silence, unable to agree on a single course of action. There was talk of treaties, of negotiations, but the truth weighed heavily on their minds. Tyrann had no interest in diplomacy. He had no interest in humanity's past, its struggles, or its fragile unity. Earth would either submit, or it would burn. Amid the chaos of Earth's capital, in a high-tech bunker beneath the crumbling ruins of the old world's governments, Captain Sarah Kane paced back and forth. Her sharp eyes were focused on the news feeds flashing across the room. The Drakkar were not just sending a scouting force, they were arriving in full strength, their fleet shadowing Earth's orbit like a predator circling its prey. The Council was doing nothing. The military was fractured, spread thin from internal wars and 1,000 other struggles. But Kane saw something in the data, something that lit a fire in her chest. The Drakkar were strong, but they had overlooked one thing: humanity's resilience. Kane's past was tangled with a history of rebellion and defiance against a corrupt, fractured system. As a former officer in the Earth Space Forces, she had seen firsthand the impact of years of political infighting and failed alliances. But beneath her hardened exterior, she carried the weight of a singular, unwavering belief: humanity was not yet beaten. The resistance she had long envisioned, one born from the embers of Earth's most forgotten battlegrounds, was about to ignite. She turned sharply to her co-conspirators, a mix of former military strategists, engineers, and rogue scientists. The Council will wait until it's too late. But we, Kane's voice was quiet but steely, we will strike first. We've been underestimating ourselves for too long. It's time to remind the galaxy what humanity is capable of. The plan was simple but dangerous. The first step was to establish a unified resistance, to send a message to Earth's divided factions that they needed to join forces. Kane reached out to old allies: General Hargrove, the leader of the remnants of Earth's once proud defense forces, and Dr. Elena Salazar, a brilliant scientist who had been developing secret weapons using reverse-engineered alien tech. Together, they would spearhead the resistance movement, forge new alliances, and prepare for an oncoming war that would test humanity's very survival. Kane knew she had only a few days, maybe even hours, before the Drakkar descended on Earth. She turned to face the screen one final time, her mind racing with calculations, strategies, and the ever-present weight of the war ahead. As the countdown began, she couldn't shake the feeling that Earth's last hope, humanity's last hope, was no longer the mighty weapons, or the fleets of warships, or even the politicians. It was her and her team. "We're out of time," she muttered to herself, her fingers tapping against the table. "Let's make it count." In the distance, the Drakkar ships loomed like shadows, their immense size dwarfing Earth's orbit. This was only the beginning. The true test had yet to come. The sky over Earth was darkened by the looming presence of the Drakkar fleet, their warships gliding silently in space as if they were harbingers of doom. For days, the world had held its breath, watching as the Empire's ships grew ever closer. People whispered of the impossible odds of an unstoppable force descending upon Earth. Yet amidst the overwhelming despair, there was a spark of rebellion. Captain Sarah Kane's call had been answered. Leaders from Earth's fractured factions had pledged their support, though not without doubt. Old rivalries ran deep, but the threat of the Drakkar was stronger than any divide. By now, the Galactic resistance movement had taken shape, and every minute counted. Their first mission was to deliver a crippling blow to the Drakkar, a symbolic strike that would show them Earth would not go quietly into the night. Kane's plan was bold and reckless, even by her standards. A small team of operatives, led by herself, would infiltrate a Drakkar reconnaissance vessel orbiting the moon. The ship was lightly defended, far from the Drakkar fleet's core, making it a perfect target for a stealth operation. The mission's goal: steal vital intelligence on Drakkar military tactics and their technological advancements. If successful, it would give Earth's forces the edge they desperately needed. If it failed, Earth would be one step closer to extinction. The team assembled in a clandestine hangar, the air thick with tension. There was no room for failure. Among the volunteers were Commander Alec Hayes, a former pilot whose skills had earned him a reputation as one of Earth's finest, and Dr. Elena Salazar, the brilliant scientist who had spent years reverse engineering alien technology in secret. Kane trusted both implicitly, especially Salazar, whose knowledge could prove invaluable if they encountered Drakkar tech in the field. As the ship launched from Earth's surface, the weight of the mission pressed on Kane's shoulders. The team's target, the Stromar, was a sleek, heavily armed scout ship orbiting the moon. It was meant to be nothing more than a surveillance tool, but Kane knew the Drakkar never underestimated any opponent, and this ship would be no different. They couldn't afford to make a single mistake. "We're approaching," Hayes reported, his voice steady over the comms. The ship's cloaking system, developed by Salazar, rendered them invisible to the Drakkar's sensors, but the danger of detection was ever present. One wrong move, one missed signal, and everything would come crashing down. "Stay sharp," Kane replied, her gaze fixed on the moon ahead. "We're not just stealing intel, we're making a statement." The team navigated their small, unarmed craft toward the Stromar, docking it silently in the ship's maintenance bay. Kane's pulse quickened as they prepared to breach the Drakkar vessel. In the cold silence of space, there was no room for fear, no room for doubt. The moment they stepped onto the Stromar, they would be on enemy territory, outnumbered and outgunned. They moved quickly and efficiently, their movements synchronized like a well-oiled machine. Kane led the way, her hand gripping the hilt of her plasma knife as they breached the airlock and made their way deeper into the ship. The corridors were dark, silent, the hum of the ship's engines their only company. But Kane knew the Drakkar would not be caught off guard. They had to move quickly. As they reached the ship's data core, a silent alarm blared, echoing through the hallways. They had been detected. The Drakkar were far more prepared than Kane had anticipated. Their stealth technology had worked flawlessly, but the Stromar wasn't just a reconnaissance ship, it was a fortress in disguise. The resistance team was trapped. A wave of Drakkar soldiers appeared at the far end of the hallway, their armored forms advancing with chilling precision. Kane's mind raced. There was no time to retreat, no time for subtlety. She signaled to her team. "We fight our way out," Kane said, her voice unwavering. The battle erupted in an instant. Plasma fire crackled through the air as the resistance fighters opened fire, taking down Drakkar soldiers one by one. The Drakkar were formidable, their strength and technology unmatched, but Kane's team was relentless. Hayes piloted the ship with expert precision, using their craft's maneuverability to dodge incoming fire and create openings for the ground team. In the chaos, Kane found herself face to face with one of the Drakkar officers, a towering figure clad in black armor, his eyes glowing with an otherworldly intensity. He raised his weapon, a jagged energy blade that crackled with power, but Kane was faster. She lunged forward, her plasma knife cutting through the air with deadly accuracy. The officer's blade clashed against hers, but in the end, it was Kane's tenacity that won the fight. With a final strike, she drove her blade into the officer's chest, bringing him to the ground. The team retreated, data in hand, but they were too late. The Drakkar had already sent a distress signal. The mission had been a success, but at a great cost. As they returned to their ship, the dark silhouette of Kivarn's fleet loomed ever closer. The battle was only beginning. Kane's voice was steady, though the weight of their tasks settled heavily on her shoulders. "We've made our first move. Let them know we're not afraid, but the real fight begins now." The war for Earth had only just begun, and the Resistance was determined to show the galaxy that humanity was not just a planet to be destroyed, it was a force to be reckoned with. The data they had secured from the Stromar was invaluable. With it, Earth's resistance leaders now knew the exact nature of the Drakkar fleet's composition, the advanced weaponry they wielded, and most crucially, the locations of several key command vessels that could be struck. But the cost of the operation weighed heavily on Kane and her team. The Drakkar were not a race to underestimate, and the consequences of their discovery could be catastrophic. However, there was no turning back now. Back in the underground resistance base, Kane and General Hargrove huddled around a holographic table, analyzing the information. Salazar and Hayes were at their sides, both weary but eager to make their next move. "This data gives us a fighting chance," Hargrove said, his gravelly voice thick with determination. He was a veteran of Earth's military campaigns, a man hardened by years of war, but even he could feel the weight of the task ahead. "If we can hit their supply lines, cripple their ability to resupply, we might just slow them down long enough to build up our own forces." Kane nodded, her sharp eyes scanning the hologram of the Drakkar fleet. "We can't afford to play it safe. Kivarn won't hesitate to wipe us out if he senses weakness. We need to hit them hard and fast. I'm talking about a full-scale counterattack, one that sends a message." Her hand hovered over the map, and the target coordinates appeared on the hologram. A heavily guarded Drakkar supply station on the outskirts of their fleet's formation. This station was the lifeblood of Kivarn's operations, a massive facility supplying his war machines with the fuel and resources necessary for their destruction. If they could take it out, the Drakkar would be forced to divert precious resources to defending it, buying Earth's forces valuable time. But it wouldn't be easy. The station was heavily defended by Drakkar warships and automated defenses. Kane knew they needed a distraction, something bold and audacious that would allow them to strike with maximum force. "We need to draw their attention," Kane said, her voice cold with resolve. "We'll give them something they can't ignore." As the plan took shape, Kane turned to Salazar. "Can your team modify the cloaking technology to get us closer to the station?" The scientist nodded. "It's risky, but I think we can upgrade the stealth system enough to get us within striking distance. I'll need a few hours to make the necessary adjustments." Hayes, meanwhile, was working to modify the weapon systems on their ship. Earth's technology, though advancing, was still far behind the Drakkars in terms of firepower. But Hayes wasn't just a pilot, he was a master of improvisation. With a few modifications, he believed they could turn the tide. "We'll need every advantage we can get," Hayes said, a grin tugging at his lips despite the tension. "I'll get the weapons ready." With the plan in motion, the team prepared for the assault. Time was short. The Drakkar fleet was closing in on Earth, and their defenses were becoming stronger. If they didn't act soon, the opportunity would slip away. As the stealth ship roared to life and the cloaking technology hummed with power, Kane gathered her team. "This is it. We hit hard, we hit fast, and we show Kivarn that Earth won't kneel." The team departed under the cover of darkness, their ship vanishing into the depths of space. The journey to the Drakkar supply station was a tense, nerve-wracking one. The vastness of space felt more suffocating than ever as they approached their target. Kane's mind raced with calculations, considering every variable, every risk. She knew they had one shot. If they failed, they'd not only lose the element of surprise, but also their lives. As they neared the station, the Dreadcar sensors failed to detect them, thanks to the enhanced cloaking system. The massive supply station loomed ahead, surrounded by a series of patrol ships and automated turrets. Kane's fingers hovered over the controls, ready to spring into action. "Ready," Salazar said, her voice tight with focus. Kane's eyes flicked to the holographic display once more, confirming their trajectory. "On my mark." The ship moved silently toward the station, their cloaking system keeping them hidden. But as they neared, Kane's instincts flared. Something wasn't right. The Drakkar were too quiet, too calm. Then, without warning, an alarm blared. A fleet of Drakkar warships materialized from the dark side of the station, their deadly weapons primed. It was a trap. "Ambush," Kane shouted, her voice sharp with urgency. "Break left. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." The ship jolted as Kane threw it into a sharp turn, narrowly avoiding an incoming plasma burst. The Drakkar had anticipated their attack, and now they were in the middle of a full-blown assault. The resistance team was outnumbered, but they weren't alone. From the farthest reaches of the galaxy, Earth's last hope had ignited, and they were willing to fight until the very end. The battle for survival had escalated, and humanity's resolve was about to be tested like never before. The battle erupted in a maelstrom of laser fire and explosions. Kane's hands flew across the controls as she expertly maneuvered the ship through the chaos, narrowly dodging each incoming shot. The Dreadcar warships were enormous, their sleek, black hulls bristling with weapons, each one a beast of destruction in its own right. Despite being outgunned and outnumbered, Kane wasn't about to let the resistance go down without a fight. "Hayes, get those weapons online now," Kane barked. Commander Alec Hayes, his face lit by the flashing red warning lights, nodded without missing a beat. "Already on it. You just keep dodging, I'll handle the rest." He worked feverishly, recalibrating the ship's weapon systems to match the Dreadcar's power levels. The weapons may have been a modification of Earth's existing tech, but Hayes had a way of making them feel like they were a step ahead of anything the Drakkar had seen before. The Stromar's automated defenses fired first, sending energy blasts toward the incoming ships. But the Drakkar shields absorbed the majority of the hits. Hayes grunted, tapping a few more controls. "They're tougher than I thought. We need to hit them where it hurts." Kane's heart pounded in her chest. The situation was getting increasingly dire. One of the Drakkar ships locked onto them with a barrage of plasma, and the ship rattled violently as explosions shook the hull. "Shields at 50%, Salazar reported from the back of the ship, her voice tense but calm. "Keep them up as long as you can," Kane replied, her gaze flicking between the controls and the advancing ships. "We're going to make this count." Without hesitation, she initiated a risky move, a sudden sharp turn toward the closest Drakkar vessel. The maneuver left them open to fire from the other ships, but it brought them within range of the target. Now Hayes. The resistant ship's modified weapons powered up, and the first shot rang out, sending a beam of searing energy into the Drakkar ship's exposed flank. The vessel buckled under the assault, sparks flying as the shield system began to fail. "Got it," Hayes shouted, grinning. "That did the trick. Now let's finish it." Kane didn't need any further encouragement. She swung the ship in a full arc, expertly dodging fire as she got within range for another strike. With a roar, the ship's weapons fired again, a second blast slamming into the heart of the Drakkar ship's engine core. The vessel erupted into a fiery explosion, debris scattering in every direction. "We've got one down, but the rest are still coming," Hayes warned, his fingers flying over the control panel to prep the ship's next move. Kane didn't need to be told. We need to break through the perimeter and make it to the supply station. Salazar, status on the cloaking tech. The scientist's voice came back with a crackle of static. I'm working on rerouting power to boost the cloaking field, but it's not going to hold long against this level of firepower. We'll need to move fast. Understood, Kane replied, her jaw clenched in determination. Hayes, pull back slightly, give us some distance, just long enough for Salazar to finish. With the ship still under fire, Hayes adjusted their course, keeping them nimble enough to avoid the worst of the incoming blasts while giving Salazar room to work. The entire ship shuddered again as another blast hit their shields, but they were still holding. The Drakkar were relentless. Their warships came at them from all angles, and now their tactics had shifted. They were no longer trying to obliterate the resistance with brute force. They were surrounding them, tightening the noose with every passing second. It was a trap, and Kane knew it, but they couldn't stop now. Not when the success of this mission was so close. Kane took a deep breath, steadying herself. We're not backing down. Not now, not ever. Hayes, get us close to that supply station. Full speed ahead. Hayes grimaced, but he didn't hesitate. Roger that, Captain. The ship surged forward, narrowly avoiding a second barrage. As they closed in on the supply station, Kane could feel the heat of the Drakkar fleet's concentrated fire increasing, their fury palpable. She needed to get within range, just a little closer. But with each second that ticked by, the chances of survival grew slimmer. If they didn't make it past this next barrage, they would never get close enough to take down the station. Salazar, now's your time, Kane said, her voice almost a whisper. Activating, Salazar replied. The ship's cloaking technology hummed to life, the ship blending almost seamlessly into the darkness of space. The Drakkar's sensors, unable to detect them, faltered for a moment as the resistant ship passed through the outer perimeter of their defensive field. We're through, Salazar said, sounding both relieved and tense, but we don't have long. Kane could see it now, the massive Drakkar supply station, a structure of terrifying proportions, bristling with weaponry and shields. Their target. They were almost there. Just one more push, and Earth's first real strike against the Drakkar would succeed. But as Kane's fingers tightened around the controls, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking right into the heart of the storm. And this time, there would be no turning back. The ship's hull groaned as they plunged deeper into the heart of the Drakkar fleet's defenses. The cloaking technology was holding, just barely, but Kane knew it wouldn't last forever. The massive supply station loomed ahead, a stark and intimidating structure surrounded by a web of deadly warships and automated turrets. There was no turning back now. They had made it this far, and failure wasn't an option. Status on cloaking? Kane asked, her voice steady but tinged with urgency. Salazar's voice came through the comms, tight with concentration. The system is holding, but it's running on borrowed time. The more we push it, the more energy we drain. We're about a minute away from being detected. Understood, Kane replied, her mind already running through the sequence of events. Hayes, get us in position. We hit them fast, hard, and then get out. Hayes, his knuckles white on the control panel, nodded. Roger that, Captain. Let's make it count. The ship shuddered again as they passed within striking distance of the station. Kane could feel the weight of the moment in the pit of her stomach. This wasn't just about blowing up a supply depot. It was about sending a message, one the Drakkar couldn't ignore. They had underestimated humanity before, but this time, they'd see just how far Earth was willing to go to defend itself. Locking on target, Hayes called out, "Weapons are primed and ready." "Fire," Kane commanded, her voice cold with determination. The ship's modified weapons unleashed a volley of laser fire, the energy beams cutting through the vacuum of space and slamming into the exterior of the station. The first few shots barely made a dent, but then, with the second volley, the Drakkar's shields flickered. Kane's heart raced as they breached the first layer of defenses, and the station's surface began to crack and rupture, exposing its vulnerable core. "We've got a breach," Hayes shouted. "The shields are down, but they've detected us." The moment of surprise was over. The Drakkar fleet reacted immediately, turning their guns toward the cloaked ship, their weapons charging with deadly intent. The station's automated defenses came alive, sending a barrage of energy pulses that exploded around them, shaking the ship with violent force. "Brace for impact," Kane yelled, gripping the console as the ship rocked violently. The hull groaned under the pressure, but the cloaking tech was holding just enough to keep them hidden from the bulk of the enemy's targeting systems. "Damage report," Kane barked. "Shields at 30%, hull integrity holding at 70%, Salazar replied. "But they're closing in fast. We need to finish this now or we won't make it out." Kane's mind raced. They were almost there. The supply station was crippled, but not destroyed. She needed to take out the core, the heart of the station, to ensure that it couldn't be repaired or used again. It was a high-risk move, but there was no other choice. "Hayes, full power to the engines. I'm taking us in." Before he could respond, Kane yanked the ship into a sharp dive, threading the needle between two Drakkar warships as she aimed directly for the station's central reactor. Her fingers flew over the controls, guiding the ship with expert precision. The Drakkar warships fired relentlessly, but the ship's evasive maneuvers kept them just out of range. The seconds ticked away, the tension mounting as the reactor grew closer. Kane could almost feel the pulse of the station's core beating through the air. She tightened her grip on the controls, her breath steady but quick. "Ready the torpedoes, Hayes," Kane ordered, her voice razor-sharp. "We're hitting it with everything we've got." "Firing torpedoes," Hayes replied, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. The torpedoes shot forward, their warheads glowing with destructive energy. The Drakkar fleet scrambled to stop them, but it was too late. The first torpedo struck the reactor with a brilliant explosion that rocked the entire station. A shockwave rippled outward, and for a brief moment, everything seemed to freeze, time, space, and the chaos of the battle. Then the second torpedo hit. The station's core detonated in a blinding burst of energy. The station's massive structure tore apart as the force of the explosion sent shockwaves through the surrounding space. The Drakkar warships closest to the blast were flung backward, their hulls cracking under the immense pressure. The blast could be seen across the galaxy, a violent reminder that humanity was not to be underestimated. But Kane knew that this was only the beginning. The Drakkar would retaliate, and they would come at Earth with everything they had. The Resistance had taken a massive step forward, but the true battle was just beginning. Kane looked to her crew, her resolve steeled. "Now we get out of here, full speed ahead. We've made our mark, but the war is far from over." The ship's engines roared to life as they turned to escape the devastation they had caused. The Drakkar were down, but they were far from out. The Stromar surged forward, cutting through the debris field left by the obliterated supply station. Behind them, the Drakkar fleet regrouped, their wrath tangible even across the cold expanse of space. The destruction of their supply station was a wound to their pride, but more importantly, it was a blow to their logistical network. The Drakkar would stop at nothing to crush those responsible. "Incoming fire, they're locking on," Hayes yelled, his hands flying over the controls to adjust the ship's trajectory. "Divert all power to evasive maneuvers," Kane shouted, her voice sharp and focused. "Salazar, boost the cloaking system. We need to disappear." Salazar was already working furiously, sweat beading on her brow as she rerouted energy from non-critical systems. "Cloaking's running at full capacity, but it won't last long under this kind of strain." The Stromar swerved and rolled, narrowly avoiding a barrage of plasma bolts that lit up the darkness around them. Kane's knuckles whitened as she gripped the controls, pushing the ship to its limits. The Drakkar warships pursued relentlessly, their advanced targeting systems compensating for the ship's erratic movements. "We're not going to outrun them," Hayes said grimly. "We need another plan." Kane's mind raced. The ship was damaged, their cloaking tech was failing, and the Drakkar fleet was closing in. They couldn't head back to Earth. It would lead the Drakkar straight to their homeworld. She glanced at the navigation panel, her eyes scanning for any possible escape route. Then she saw it, an uncharted sector of space, marked only by a warning beacon. "The abyss," Salazar whispered, noticing where Kane's gaze had fallen. Her voice trembled slightly. "That region is unstable. No one who's entered has ever returned." Kane set her jaw. "Then it's exactly where we're going. The Drakkar won't follow us into a death trap." "That's because it's a death trap," Hayes protested. "We're already hanging by a thread. You want to gamble what's left on ghost stories." Kane locked eyes with him. "Do you have a better idea?" Hayes hesitated, then let out a resigned sigh. "Course set for the abyss. If we die, I'm haunting you." "Noted," Kane replied, a faint smirk breaking through her determined expression. As the Stromar veered toward the uncharted region, the crew braced themselves. The abyss was a notorious void where sensors malfunctioned and ships vanished without a trace. It was said to be a graveyard of lost vessels, consumed by gravitational anomalies and strange energies that defied explanation. The moment they crossed the threshold, the ship's systems flickered, and the cockpit was bathed in an eerie blue glow. The stars outside seemed to warp and twist, their light bending unnaturally. Kane tightened her grip on the controls, her instincts screaming at her to turn back, but that wasn't an option. "Systems are glitching," Salazar reported, her voice steady despite the tension. "Gravity's fluctuating, and our shields are barely holding." "Stay focused," Kane said. "Hayes, prep the ship for emergency stabilization. Salazar, keep the cloaking tech running as long as you can. We just need to survive long enough to lose them." Behind them, the Drakkar hesitated at the edge of the abyss. Their fleet slowed, their ships forming a menacing line as they debated whether to pursue. It was a standoff, and for a moment, Kane thought they might hold back. Then one of the Drakkar ships surged forward, its captain clearly unwilling to let the resistance escape. It plunged into the abyss, its massive hull shimmering as it entered the strange region of space. "They're following," Hayes warned. "Let them," Kane muttered. "This place isn't just dangerous for us, it's dangerous for them too." As if on cue, the pursuing Drakkar ship was struck by an invisible force. Its hull groaned and twisted, sections of metal peeling away as it was caught in a gravitational anomaly. The ship spiraled out of control before vanishing into the void, its fate unknown. The Stromar trembled as similar forces tugged at it, but Kane's precise piloting kept them on course. She guided the ship through the chaotic currents of the abyss, her instincts sharper than ever. One by one, the pursuing Drakkar ships faltered, their crews unprepared for the volatile environment. "We're losing them," Salazar said, a note of relief in her voice. "But we can't stay here much longer. The abyss will tear us apart." "Just a little further," Kane said, her voice calm but firm. "We need to find a way out without leading them back to Earth." The ship surged through the twisting void, the crew holding their breath as they navigated the unknown. Ahead, a faint light appeared, a beacon of hope in the chaos. It wasn't marked on any map, and its origin was a mystery, but it was their only chance. "Head for the light," Kane ordered. As the Stromar raced toward the mysterious glow, Kane felt a flicker of hope. They had survived the abyss so far, and if they could make it out alive, they would have a chance to regroup and strike again. Humanity's fight wasn't over yet, it was only just beginning. The faint light ahead grew stronger, cutting through the chaos of the abyss. It pulsed with an almost rhythmic quality, as if calling to them. Kane felt an inexplicable pull toward it, a mix of hope and apprehension churning in her gut. "Captain," Salazar said, her voice low with awe. "That light, it's not natural. I'm picking up faint energy readings. It's ancient, something I've never seen before." "Is it hostile?" Kane asked, her eyes fixed on the beacon. "Unknown," Salazar replied, her fingers flying over the console. "But whatever it is, it's stabilizing the area around it. The gravitational anomalies are less severe as we approach." Kane nodded. "Hayes, bring us in carefully. Let's not add being vaporized by an alien beacon to our list of problems." Hayes chuckled nervously. "You've got it, Captain," easing us in. As the Stromar moved closer, the beacon came into view, a massive crystalline structure floating in the void. It shimmered with an iridescent glow, its surfaces shifting and refracting light in ways that defied comprehension. Around it, the chaotic forces of the abyss seemed to calm, creating a bubble of relative safety. "Whatever this thing is, it's keeping the abyss at bay," Salazar said, her voice tinged with wonder. "It's like a lifeboat in the middle of a storm." "But who built it?" Hayes asked, his tone uneasy. "And why is it still here?" Kane's eyes narrowed. "Questions for later. Right now, we need to figure out how to use it to our advantage." Suddenly, the ship's proximity alarms blared. Kane's head snapped to the sensor readout, her heart sinking. The Drakkar weren't giving up. A cluster of their warships had entered the abyss, their larger vessels struggling but adapting to the hostile environment. "They're coming in hot," Captain Hayes warned. "We don't have the firepower to hold them off." Kane clenched her fists, her mind racing. The beacon was their only chance. If it was stabilizing the area, perhaps it could be weaponized, or at the very least, used to escape. But it was a gamble. They had no idea what the beacon was capable of, or if tampering with it would make things worse. "Salazar," Kane said, her voice steady despite the tension. "Can you interface with the beacon? See if there's anything we can use." Salazar hesitated, then nodded. "I can try, but this tech is way beyond anything we've seen before. If I mess up it cold." "We don't have a choice," Kane interrupted. "Do it." Salazar moved quickly, connecting the ship systems to the beacon through a series of rapid modifications. The moment the link was established, the Stromar shuddered, and the cockpit was filled with a blinding light. The crystalline structure seemed to react, its glow intensifying as it synchronized with the ship. "I've got something," Salazar shouted. "The beacon is responding to us. It's like it's alive. It's offering options, energy redirection, localized gravitational manipulation, and a weapon system." "A weapon system," Kane repeated, her heart pounding. "Can we use it?" "I think so," Salazar replied. "But it's going to drain what's left of our power. We'll be dead in the water if it doesn't work." "Make it work," Kane ordered, her voice firm. "Hayes, position us between the beacon and the Drakkar. If this thing can fight, we're giving it the best shot we can." The Stromar moved into position, its engines straining as the Drakkar warships closed in. Plasma bolts streaked through the void, but the ship's shields held, for now. Salazar worked frantically, her hands a blur, as she activated the beacon's weapon system. "Targeting locked," Salazar announced. "Firing. Now." The beacon unleashed a burst of energy, a brilliant lance of light that tore through the darkness. It struck the laid Drakkar ship, ripping through its shields and hull with devastating precision. The explosion sent shockwaves through the fleet, forcing the other warships to scatter. The beacon fired again, and again, each shot more devastating than the last. The Drakkar fleet was in disarray, their ships struggling to adapt to the relentless assault. Kane watched, a grim satisfaction in her eyes. "They underestimated us," she muttered. "Big mistake." As the last Drakkar ship retreated, the beacon dimmed, its energy spent. The Stromar was left adrift, its systems barely functional, but they were alive and victorious. Kane turned to her crew, a weary but determined smile on her face. "We're not out of this yet. Let's figure out how to get home, and how to use what we've learned to finish this fight. The Stromar drifted silently in the void, surrounded by the remnants of the Drakkar fleet and the faint glow of the now-dormant beacon. Kane sat in the captain's chair, her face illuminated by flickering console lights as she assessed the situation. The ship was battered, its systems barely holding together, but the crew had survived. They had achieved what no one thought possible, a victory against the unstoppable Drakkar. Salazar slumped back in her chair, exhaustion etched into her features. The beacon's completely spent. Whatever energy it had left, we used it all. Good, Kane replied. It was worth it. Hayes glanced at the navigation console, his brow furrowed. We're still in the abyss, Captain. And with our systems in this state, we're not exactly in a position to celebrate. We need to figure out how to get out of here. Kane nodded, her mind already racing. The beacon had bought them time, but it wasn't a permanent solution. The Drakkar wouldn't stop hunting them, and their survival depended on finding a way back to Earth with what they'd learned. Salazar, Kane said, turning to her engineer. Can you salvage anything from the beacon? Data, tech, anything we can use to our advantage. Salazar straightened, her fingers moving over the controls despite her obvious fatigue. I'll try. The interface is still active, but it's fragile. Give me a few minutes. As Salazar worked, Hayes turned his attention to the navigation systems. I've got a possible route out of the abyss, he said. It's risky, but it should get us clear of the worst gravitational anomalies. Plot it, Kane ordered. We'll make our move as soon as Salazar's done. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours as the crew worked in tense silence. Outside the ship, the swirling chaos of the abyss seemed to press in on them, a constant reminder of the danger they were in. Finally, Salazar let out a triumphant cry. I've got something, she said. The beacon wasn't just a stabilizer, it was a repository. It's packed with data on the Drakkar, their fleet movements, and even weaknesses in their technology. This could turn the tide of the war. Kane's eyes lit up. Good work. Secure everything and get ready to move. Hayes, take us out of here. The Stromar shuddered as its engines roared to life, struggling against the chaotic forces of the abyss. Hayes guided the ship along the plotted course, his hands steady despite the strain. The crew held their breath as the ship navigated through twisting gravitational fields and erratic energy bursts. We're almost there, Hayes said, his voice tight with concentration. Just a little more. The ship lurched violently, alarms blaring as an unexpected surge of energy swept through the abyss. Kane gripped her chair, her heart racing. What was that? Some kind of anomaly, Salazar said, her voice strained. It's pulling us back. Kane's mind raced. They couldn't afford to lose the beacon's data or their lives. Divert all power to the engines, she ordered. We're not staying here. The ship groaned in protest, but the engines roared louder, pushing against the invisible force. The crew worked together in perfect synchrony, their desperation fueling their determination. Finally, with one last surge of power, the Stromar broke free, emerging from the abyss into open space. Cheers erupted in the cockpit as the crew realized they had made it. Kane allowed herself a small smile, the weight of their survival settling on her shoulders, but she knew their fight was far from over. Set a course for Earth, she said. We've got a war to win. As the Stromar limped toward home, Salazar transferred the beacon's data to secure storage. The information they carried was more than just intelligence, it was hope. The Drakkar's weaknesses, their strategies, and the knowledge of the beacon's power could turn the tide in humanity's favor. Kane leaned back in her chair, her eyes fixed on the stars. The abyss had tested them in every way, but they had emerged stronger. The Drakkar might have been unstoppable once, but now humanity had the means to fight back. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a new chapter in the war, a chapter where humanity would rise, defy the odds, and reclaim their future. As the ship disappeared into the distance, the beacon's faint glow flickered one last time before fading into the void, its purpose fulfilled. The abyss would remain a dangerous mystery, but for Kane and her crew, it had become a symbol of resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest depths, hope could still shine.